And I tell you again, I respect this court, but I'm innocent. I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my son, Paul.
Well, and it might not have been you. It might have been the monster you become when you take 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 opioid pills.
In our spotlight this morning, the Alex Murdaugh family murders case through the eyes of a veteran reporter who's become an authority on the case. Once prominent South Carolina lawyer Alex Murdaugh convicted of murdering his wife Maggie and his youngest son Paul in 2021. He told the jury, though, he didn't do it.
I don't know what I said to law enforcement, Mr. Waters, but I can tell you this. When I pulled up and I saw Mags and Paul, I jumped out of that car. I know that I went back to my car and I called 911 as quickly as I could.
Murdaugh is currently in prison hoping to get a new trial based on allegations that Clerk of Court Becky Hill wrongly shared information with the jury and the media during his homicide case. The new book, The Devil at His Elbow, Alex Murdaugh and the Fall of a Southern Dynasty, is out now on paperback. And it's already on the New York Times bestseller list. And joining me now, the book's author, Wall Street Journal reporter Valerie Bauerlein. Valerie, congratulations on the success of your book, and thank you for coming on the show this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So think back to the time when you were in the courtroom for us, please. During the trial, it's my understanding that you thought at one point he might get away with this. Tell us why, please.
You know, it's so eerie, really, to watch that footage of Maggie and Paul. You know, today's June 3rd, 2025. 4 years ago today, they were living the last days of their lives, and so it's really it's strange to remember that of all the circus that we've experienced here, at the core of it, it's a story of how a man could kill his wife and son. But, you know, I really didn't know. It was my sense, and I think a lot of the media expected a hung jury, because you have to remember, we were in a tiny county, Colleton County, where the Murdaugh family had been, you know, held sway over the prosecutor's office for 100 years. And this was, you know, 20,000 people in that county, almost all of whom knew of the Murdaughs or even knew Alex personally. So it was just hard to imagine that in a place where those connections were so deep, there wouldn't be one of 12 jurors who might see some reasonable doubt here. But in the end, you know, it was a guilty verdict. And I think, you know, I may have been surprised by that. Others may have, but you know, it was resounding guilty within less than 2 hours, right?
Right, Valerie. In your book, I understand that you've got some interviews with the lead detectives, sharing things with you that they haven't shared before about how they built the case. Would you share a little bit with us now, perhaps something new that you learned after talking with them after the fact?
Well, you know, I had a little bit of the benefit of time. I spent more than 2 years on this book, and I talked to more than 200 people, many of whom had not spoken to the media before or to other authors. And I also spent a total of 4.5, roughly, months on the ground in South Carolina. So I did have the opportunity to just really sit down with people without a notebook at first and get to know them a little bit. One of those people was David Owen, the lead detective on the case. And he told me just the personal toll that it took on his life, knowing he had a strong feeling from within 24 hours of meeting and laying eyes on Alex Murdaugh that he knew that more than he was saying. But he couldn't prove it for, you know, essentially 9-10 months, which was a very long time. And he felt like it could end up, you know, ruining him financially if he failed. There was a lot at risk for him personally there. And I think, Blanca Simpson was another key voice, and she shared some evidence or some observations she made that there at Moselle about a towel she spotted in his Suburban that night, right? A wet towel kind of wadded up in the console that to her, sealed the deal. That's how she knew that he had showered off in her mind and grabbed that towel, which was in the laundry room. So I wrote this book with two people in mind, people that really knew of the case but hadn't followed it at all and wanted sort of the beginning, middle, and end, but also kind of the people that watch y'all every day and every minute of footage that you showed. I wanted to surprise them with some new kernel or bit of information they might not have known before.
Right, that's fantastic, Valerie. Tell me, based on everything that you've learned through your observations in the courtroom, watching the evidence being presented, the interviews that you've done so extensively in order to write this book, what's your opinion on what happened the night of the murders?
Well, you played that footage of Alec testifying, and I really think there were times when he was on the stand that he told the truth. There were some things he said that the evidence shows were true. I think that night, two things happened. He said that whoever did this had it in their mind a long time. He told his sister-in-law, Marion Proctor, that. I think that's true. I think he had in the back of his mind if he ever had to break glass, and as we know, the walls were closing in on him that afternoon with his financial crimes. He was being found out at the law firm. He was also on the hook in the tragic death of Mallory Beach, that case, to turn over his financials. So I think he had in his mind, if he ever needed to change the subject in a very dramatic way to take attention off himself, that was the emergency plan. But I also think he snapped. So I think he had planned it in one hand and then he snapped in the other. And Creighton Waters, the lead prosecutor, we talked about this at some length for the book, but also he mentioned it in the trial. They had argued frequently over Alec's drug use, his opioid pills, which you heard Judge Newman refer to. And Alec that night was asked 8 ways from Sunday, like, what did you and Maggie talk about in the world's shortest, most quiet dinner that you can't remember one thing you talked about on the most important thing in your life? And I think another thing that I reveal in the book is that Blanca Simpson, the housekeeper, found evidence of an empty pill baggie in Maggie's bathroom that evening when Alec was supposedly off drugs. He had been withdrawing the day before. He had promised her again he was going to be off drugs. I think the evidence supports that he planned it, but he also snapped when there was some sort of confrontation. And the only person who knows what that was, who's living, is Alex Murdaugh.
Is him. Oh, I know. I don't know if we'll ever hear the truth from him entirely. Valerie Bauerlein, thank you so much for the conversation this morning and for coming on. Looking forward to reading your book. Take good care.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Certainly.